Let's talk to former Minister for Children and Families, Conservative MP Tim Loughton, who joins us. Good morning to you, Tim.
Morning, Julia.
Good morning to you. I want to talk about the whole free school meal voucher issue, but what do you make of these 55 Tory MPs demanding more help for the North and specifically this roadmap, this exit strategy from lockdown rules? Do you agree with them?
Well, yeah, I sympathise a lot, and I'm in the south and the southeast. Fortunately, we haven't had these restrictions. We're in the lowest tier at the moment, and we forget that some of the constituencies in the north have been there not just since last week, but since the summer. And I just think the problem is, and this is where there's a failure of government in proper explanation. I think people would be prepared to be patient and to go along with it if there was a much better explanation of exactly why certain restrictions have been brought in, what effect they're having, and what level they need to reach in order for them to be reduced or taken away altogether. And then when you read bits in the paper yesterday, it said the rule of 6 and closing pubs at 10 actually has no impact on the infection spread.
Yep.
I don't know if that's true or not, but then people think, well, why are we doing all this if it's not actually having an impact? And we need to explain the impact, and if the impact isn't there, then we need to change it.
Well, this is the problem, but we know that lockdowns don't necessarily have any impact other than simply delaying the virus. Again, it did the job back in March and April, the flattening the curve, so you don't have lots of people getting ill at the same time and then be unable to treat them all at the same time, and of course to sort of limit the spread, so we get test and trace up and running. Well, to all intents and purposes, we did that, but then apparently we're just going to stay in this forever and ever. We hear lots of different news about vaccines and what may or may not happen, but the experts say, even if we find a vaccine, we're still not going to get back to normal life. How long do you think it's sustainable for the government to keep going in and out of some version of local or national lockdown for the next few months, years? How long do you think that can happen?
Well, I don't know. I'm not an expert. I know that there are three things that the government have got to try and balance. One, it's obviously the medical advice they're getting, and it would be much better if it were much clearer and single medical advice rather than all these rogue experts going off saying, "Oh, it's not working," or "we're all doomed," or
Well, they're not, but they're not going to find that,
whatever.
because the point is that there are different. We've talked about following the science. There isn't just one science. There are lots
No,
of
I know.
different
That's the
studies.
point
Yeah.
Julia, that's the point I'm making. There are three considerations. There's a medical advice and which of that you choose to take. There's the economic advice, what the economy is actually telling you is what's sustainable. And then thirdly, there's what is sustainable with the public. The public are only going to go along with it for a certain amount of time. And the less confidence they have in the advice they're being given, the less likely they are to abide by the rules or keep abiding by the rules. And it's that difficult balance the government's got to get. And at the moment, I fear there's not enough clear information about exactly the implications of what is happening and why it needs to happen and when it can stop happening. And that's the problem we've got. And at the moment, of course, we're all waiting for this vaccine. And if we start to see a vaccine in the beginning of the new year, and if it is effective for however many months, we still don't know, then we need to adapt to that. But at the moment, there's quite a few ifs still.
Indeed. Well, there are quite a few ifs as well on the issue of these free school meal vouchers.
Yeah.
Now, the vote last week's Labour motion, which the Tory MPs they voted down for there to be these free school meal vouchers for not just this half term, but for Christmas holidays as well. That was voted down. Now, you abstained in that vote. Some Tory MPs voted against. You abstained. Why did you abstain?
Well, I'm staying because I think the government got it wrong. If we had a straightforward vote that actually made a difference, I would have voted in order to retain the school meals. This was a completely opportunistic Labour stunt. They're getting quite good at that. Why wouldn't they? And my voting another way wouldn't have changed the outcome at all. And actually, to be fair, I'd voted against the government 3 times on the immigration bill earlier in the week. So I wanted to pick my fights. I hope now, by the pressure building up, me and many others, including quite a few ex-ministers, saying, look, we just need to think this through again. And however you like the whole concept of free school meals or not, it is a simple, effective device. It's something that people understand. And given that the pandemic is still raging at the moment, why are we changing the policy now? So I just want the government to certainly come up with something for Christmas that is restoring free school meals or a more effective equivalent of it. And there are various other ideas that some of us have been floating around as well, because politically, it really doesn't look good, and it's not helping any of the families who do need that
Well,
extra support for
Well,
whatever
that's
reason.
it. Is the concern from a lot of people on the Tory side about looking bad and getting a post back from your constituents saying, oh, evil, horrible Tories don't care about poor kids going hungry? Or is it about actually doing the right thing and making sure these kids are fed? But the government has said, and Boris Johnson and others have said, look, handing out free school vouchers isn't the answer. We've got the £200 million for holiday clubs. There was £63 million fund given to local councils. It wasn't ring fenced. I mean, got to just slam your head on the table and wonder why it wasn't ring fenced. But I mean, these things happen all the time. But is the concern about PR? Is the concern about making sure hungry kids get fed?
Well, it's both, because first of all, this complete focus with free school meals, and it would cost £20 million to keep it going over the half term. And remember, the government's done it for the 3 last holidays. No government had ever done it before. But it's completely taking away the attention from the huge amount of other measures and other money it's been put into welfare. The extra £20 a week on universal credit is a significant sum of money. An extra 180 million on discretionary housing payment is really helping people in need, and this whole argument is detracting from all of that. So that's a key consideration. But secondly, I think we just need to have a grown-up argument at some stage when all the hysteria is over. Why is it that there are many people who are able to cope on universal credit? Is a much more flexible benefit these days. Are able to get through school holidays and others. I'm not saying it's easy, it's a struggle. And then there are others who need additional help and support. So it's more than just a sum of money to cover school meals. We need to be doing an awful lot more to help certain families able to stand on their own feet. That's what universal credit was all about. It's trying to get people back into independence and back into work on a flexible basis or whatever. That's a debate and an argument that we need to have properly when all the fuss over free school meals has calmed down.
That is actually the salient point, isn't it? Is that actually, is this about money? This is the question I've been asking for the last week. Are people uniquely having less money, unable to afford to feed their kids at this time because of lockdown, or is this an ongoing systemic problem where people on the lowest incomes can't feed their kids? Now, I've met lots of people, spoken to lots of people over the years doing phone-ins who pointed out that they've been on the minimum wage, they've been living on benefits years or whatever, and they have never not been able to feed their kids. Children's Commissioner yesterday told me when we talked about this, she says she's supportive of the Rashford idea, but she said a lot of families, they can cope. It's when you have an extraordinary thing, the fridge breaks, the car breaks down,
Oh.
there's something, and they don't have that extra money to deal with that, and then finances suddenly go into crisis because there isn't any savings, and particularly after a very difficult year, lots of people's incomes hit, that they are seeing more of a crisis. Do you think that this needs an overhaul generally, this policy, rather than a short-term measure for the half-term week?
Okay, I think it probably does. Interestingly, out of all the emails I've had, and even though I abstained, I've had loads of flack about it. I've had 2 from people who are actually benefiting from free school meals for their kids at the moment, both of whom have said they really resent all the flack that's going around, that they're being tarred as if they are incapable of looking after their own kids during the holiday, and they are, and they don't have a problem with it. I've also heard, really interestingly, from people who work in local citizen advice and food banks and others, saying to me it is much more complex than providing food parcels. It's people who got into debt for various reasons. It's people who have these one-off hits, as you say, and how we can better help them manage their money and plan for things like that, and whether there should be some sort of discretionary fund so that when your washing machine's up the chute, you really rely on it, and it's that against food or clothing funds. Then is there some help we can give there? Now, a lot of that happens on a discretionary basis, which is why the government puts a lot of money into food banks, not just as a way of providing food, but actually providing financial support and other discretionary spenders as well. I just think there's a more effective way we can learn from some of the best practice as how we can really target that help at those families who need that extra support to get them back on their feet. And just distilling it all down to an argument about free school meals hasn't actually helped in this. We could have avoided that argument if we just paid up 20 million and then looked at it in the bigger picture later on.
Tim Loughton, thank you very much for joining us, Conservative MP, former Minister for Children and Families. Appreciate you joining us.